Thomas Chamberlain-Keen, a.k.a. TCK, is a young and rising talent that has been turning heads with his gorgeous illustrations. He has been the winner of multiple prolific art challenges on ArtStation and Cubebrush, and he is currently working as a concept artist at Atomhawk Design in Newcastle.
Oh, my mic is off.
Oh, Ken.
Oh, sorry.
Rookie mistake, man.
Yeah. And I just said,
That goes the intro.
Well, in any case, it was the standard drawing table podcast intro.
yeah. Anyway, continue.
Yes. So, what we'll be having Thomas do for us today here actually is to do a live demo for us. And he will actually be doing the CDC Challenge of the month, which has just been posted up earlier this week. So if you would do the honors of telling us what you'll be doing for us specifically today, Thomas.
Alright, well, if you're familiar with the CDC Challenge, it's character design challenge. I guess it's hosted on Facebook, and they just post up a theme each month. And quite a few of our friends, we all take part because it's a fun thing to do. A load of amazing art gets made for it, like every time. It seems like it just keeps on growing.
You've participated in like
so this,
all of the previous
I've done a
months,
couple
one
before.
in a row, I think.
well, yeah, that's it. Like when I started 1 month, I think because Koto was doing it or something, and ever since I've tried to do it each month because it's a fun challenge. It makes me do something I would never choose to myself. I mean, I didn't know what Alabriki creatures were at all, but they're crazy and they really sort of fit my aesthetic as well.
Oh yeah,
So
like I didn't even know how to pronounce
should be
it.
fun.
So what exactly is an Alabriki then?
Well, I did my research. I went on Wikipedia. They're not that old. I assumed it would be some sort of old Mexican culture, but it's from like the 1930s. This dude called Pedro Alinares or something. He got ill. He had this high fever and started to hallucinate. So he went to sleep, had some crazy dreams about these weird mythical creatures.
As one typically does.
Yeah, and they were all like shouting at the top of their lungs. So he woke up. I think he must have been better at that point, and started to just craft all of these creatures out of paper mache and stuff. Some art gallery manager or something noticed his work and really liked it, and like it got spread that way. And now it's become, I guess it's part of the Day of the Dead festival and stuff. They presumably make these models in schools and
Yeah,
things.
that's awesome. And I understand that you
yeah, it's
also
really cool.
actually have gathered some reference images ahead of time.
Yes, indeed. So, for all those who don't really know what they look like, it's these sort of things. So, they tend to be like combinations of different animals. Very brightly coloured, heavily patterned. And generally with this quite kind of, because they're carved from wood or made from paper mache, they've got this thick,
Those
chunky
are some
quality,
really crazy designs.
which makes them quite cute on the whole. Yeah.
It's really creepy, but kind of cute at the same time.
Yeah. Well, it fits in with that sort of aesthetic that they always go for with the skulls and things. Like this one down here, this is a bit more creepy.
Yeah.
Thank you. But yeah, they're really good fun. So my problem is, I don't know where to start with something like this because
Sorry about that. I'll lower the
there's-
volume a little bit.
yeah, there's like no one it's like a single theme that runs between them, apart from an animal mixed with possibly another animal, and a bunch of crazy colours and patterns on top. But you know, we've got to start from
Yes.
somewhere. If everyone has like suggestions for animals, that'd be cool. Just put some random animals in the chat. We could try and combine.
Oh yeah, and just a reminder
that'd
for
be
everyone
nice.
as well. This is an open conversation and discussion. So if you have any questions that you would like TCK to answer, just leave them in the chat, and we will let him know about it, and he can answer it.
All right.
Or, you know what? Let's also
Shall I
solo
begin?
TCK screen and get our ugly
Yeah.
mugs out of the way, Ken.
You can speak for yourself, Jordan.
Then everyone can see my mouth flapping about.
Or you can turn that off if you want.
No, I'll leave it up.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. So how do you begin to start with something like this? Because the design is so, I don't know, so weird.
Yeah. So, something that I do think about a lot is what will sort of, not necessarily what will be popular, because that's not really the best approach, but what will be appealing in a design.
Oh,
We
And last
still
month
have
was,
that problem actually where
yeah.
secondary screen overlaps the top.
Should we restart the stream?
Ooh, Matthias says sloth bear, deer, and rabbit.
I think that would be a pretty cool one. All right, so why don't you start your piece first?
Right, yes. So, what I was thinking, I was saying that last month the theme is caveman, and I really went for something which is just sort of off the wall, bizarre, sort of just pushing and pulling proportions around. I really wasn't thinking about what would look cool or what would like be obvious appealing. So I think this time it'd be fun to go for something like that. And with that in mind, I'm probably going to put some sort of humanoid character in. Because the problem with a lot of these is that, well, I guess these are actually focused on a single animal. And that's the bit that the viewer can understand and relate to. So if you go too crazy and combine too many things, it becomes hard for the viewer to like see
Right.
anything within it. It becomes almost like
So
abstract shapes. And
So when you typically start on a piece, what do you usually focus on then?
an idea, I think, generally works very well. So knowing what animals you want to combine, and then finding an interesting way to combine them. Like this one up here, I really like, because they've merged the body of an owl and a snake, and they've got like the two heads merging at the top. That's really fun. So those sort of things. If you can find like synergies between two objects and get them to combine nicely, I think that's always
Right, so I guess
good
with the
because
rough
it's like
stage, you're kind of just also experimenting with ideas and just seeing if they click.
Yeah, so with that in mind, I shall do some sketches. Yeah, I think I want to have a character in here somewhere. And what I like about this one down here is the little face hiding inside the mouth. So I think having something where like I've got a little character riding inside the mouth of this large Alabriki. So there could be a little person in here. And I also like the forms of mouths. Instead of everything being in sort of a convex shape, mouths give you a good chance to show some sort of three-dimensionality, showing the inside of a shape. And I find that works really well. It's like a good chance to have some dramatic lighting, so I could have the character in the middle, I could have them half in shadow, things like that.
So you're already kind of thinking about the lighting scenario even at this stage then?
Yes, I kind of look for places I can do interesting things. So create a design that allows me to put an interesting lighting scenario in. Something like that.
Do you always think this way even when you approach, for example, environmental pieces or props? Or is that specifically
Yes, I
for
think environmental
characters?
things even more so, because there you really want to have something interesting, lighting-wise, to really show it off.
Is this how you've also approached your previous CDC challenges as well?
I'd say so, yes. But also mixing it with that sort of idea of what might be appealing to an audience. Like I think having a little character they can relate to in the middle will do a good job of that. So yeah, it's a little person.
And with a lot of your entries
Maybe
for
sit inside the
CDC,
mouth.
I've noticed that they've garnered quite a bit of attention from other people. And you say that you try to find a design that's appealing to other people. So what does that exactly mean then? How do you exactly tap into that and find out what appeals to most people? Because I think that's a struggle that a lot of us seem to have.
Well, it's like I've almost experimented with it. The CDC that I actually won, the backpackers, it had a cute girl in it, it had a cute grandpa. They were traveling together. It was sort of like a warm, fuzzy feeling piece. And I think that's what people like. They sort of like being able to read a story.
Everyone loves
they
cute
look like
grandpas and little girls together.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, but essentially, yeah, you immediately saw that there was like a cute relationship between them. They're going out exploring, and then on top of that, I piled on sort of a lot of detail. I had lots of little trinkets and things hanging off his backpack, all of that sort of stuff. And detail can often be the bit that is immediately impressive.
I think that's an interesting point, actually, because I think for a lot of us that do concept art, details are often seen as things that you should focus on last, and sometimes even superfluous, especially if you go down the route of like photo bashing. But as far as I've seen in your work, and I think a lot of us can agree here, one of the things that stands out the most is the fact that you really take the time to put in all of those details and even render materials to such a, I guess, high polished level. So
Yes.
so I'm just wondering, like, why exactly do you choose to spend a lot of time and your energy on that?
I think it's what I find most appealing in things. I understand that the base shape will sort of carry the piece to a certain extent because it's the part of the image that you understand first. You understand the big shapes, the big forms. But what keeps your eye interested, what keeps you entertained, I think, as you continue to look at an image, is the way that the details have been rendered.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of
I
like
look at a lot of the artists.
it's kind of like what keeps people staying, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a Where's Wally will keep you looking at it for ages because you're trying to find something in the image. And when you can keep discovering new parts of the image, that's obviously very entertaining for a viewer.
How do you keep it from
certainly with
being
these.
too busy, though? Oh, sorry.
Well, that's it. This is sort of an interesting balance. They've really turned up detail to the max, and then they have reduced the 3D forms down to minimum. So that kind of balances it out. You can understand the form because it's a simple shape, but you still get the pros of dense detailing across the surface.
I see.
It's something I quite like doing, taking this approach where you exaggerate a bunch of forms, make a big appealing shape, and then just work into it, be it its material or a surface pattern or something. Because also it really helps you describe the contours of the surface. Like something that I do in environment paintings is I may draw like a mountain or something, and I enjoy like essentially drawing lines around the contours of it.
I see.
It's almost like contouring, except it sort of looks like a painterly style almost.
Yeah, I think that's also
fun
something
to
that
do.
you've done for some of your paintings, like the giant white dragon in the snowy mountains.
Yes,
one of your
exactly.
most popular pieces on ArtStation, I believe.
Indeed, yes. Yeah, it's very appealing, and people point out that bit as being something they like about the image. I want to give this thing forms.
So when you're talking about appeal, though, or like finding out what people enjoy as well, I think that must also mean that you have quite a bit of awareness of what people enjoy out there and what is popular. So I'm curious to ask, what are some of your biggest influences in terms of art, or perhaps who you really look up to and aspire?
It's difficult to say because a lot of the inspiration for paintings comes from the Chinese painters, Ron
I see.
all of those
Right.
people that do highly detailed and generally sort of, I guess, a bent towards the realistic rather than this cute stylized stuff. But the way they render really catches my eye, and I think again they're a good example of an image where you keep looking at it because there's detail everywhere. There's constant interesting lighting information and stuff.
Right.
Are there?
Like, you know, they sort of put bits of color in the shadows that you wouldn't expect to be there, and it's very entertaining on that front.
Yeah, I suppose they take like extra creative liberties when it comes to exaggerating the colors and the lighting as well.
Mm.
Man, this design that you're doing right now, it looks
So that's
whack.
It's awesome.
It's pretty crazy, but I think this theme, like, generally what I want to do with a theme is take it to the extreme, because that's something that can be quite appealing to people. Oftentimes I see art that kind of isn't almost confident enough. It doesn't go far enough in a certain direction to stand out. So with this, these are the things that people are familiar with. So I've somehow got to go more crazy than this. I want to push it further, because otherwise it would sort of blend into the designs that already exist. But then what I've done here is I've balanced that out with something that these things don't have, which is a human character.
Right.
So that's going to...
We have a question from the chat. Okay, so what is working at Atomhawk like? Have you worked in any other concept art studios in UK or worked freelance? If so, how would you compare those experiences? This is from Thea.
I have not worked anywhere else studio-wise, so Atomhawk was my first industry job. And I have done bits of freelance outside of it, but I have never been doing freelance only. So I can't really... I have no experience of a pure freelance life. But it certainly does feel more freeing. And something that's really nice about freelance is that essentially everything you do is building your own portfolio or reputation, or just directly benefiting you because you're doing a good job and getting paid for it. So I think in many ways you feel personally connected to the work a lot more. Whereas sometimes in a studio you might try your best on something, but if it's really defeating you, you kind of have the idea in your back of your mind that it doesn't matter too much. It's not directly affecting you. So, I mean, it's much more relaxing in that sense. You don't have to worry about everything too much, and there's always someone above you, or even just someone else in your team that can help you if you have a problem. If you forget to, respond to a part of the client's feedback or something, someone else will catch that. So there's much less responsibility on you alone.
Yeah.
Whereas in freelance, you're the only person that's responsible for everything the client wants, which I think can be much more stressful, but more rewarding, because then when you get it right, it's all on you. You can take all the credit, essentially.
Well, I think
does
something
that
that people would be interested to hear about in terms of working at Atomhawk is maybe some of the extracurricular activities, or maybe the work environment itself, rather than just the work.
Or
Right,
maybe...
yes, of course, yeah. So having...
Oh, sorry, go on.
Well, having not done purely freelance, I don't know whether it would really feel that lonely, or whether I'd really miss working with other people. I can't really comment on that. And I think that comes down to the individual as well, because something I love about work is just being in the office with other people. Like, I get up in the morning and I will feel very tired and unwilling to get down starting anything, but as soon as I've cycled to work and start saying hi to people, I'm ready to actually do some artwork. So,
especially after seeing my fresh face in the morning.
Well, that's it. I say hi to Jordan and his little glowing cheeks. I'm just...
Hi, Thomas.
It brings a smile to my face. So yeah, the people really make a big difference.
But yeah, for the people that do not know, Thomas and I are actually co-workers, and I was able to get him on the podcast through bribery and some special favors that I promised him.
He took me to a nice restaurant.
Yes. Oh, it was so good.
Although I still paid, so...
Well, but still, I mean,
Well,
now you know where to
bribery.
go to if you want a really nice Thai food on the weekend.
Exactly. He
We
let me in on the secret.
we have another question from Latte Milky, and she says this might be off topic, but so I want to practice my storytelling visually, but I'm not sure what kind of stories I can start as someone who just started. And which do you think is better to start learning storytelling visually? To bring story based on real life, where story can be predictable, or bring story from imaginations or fantasy stories in books, where the story isn't predictable?
As far as being predictable goes, only the details of a fantasy story are sort of the bits that people haven't seen before. Most stories, they always fit into an archetype. So you have a protagonist, you have a conflict, and whether it's predictable or not is whether it fits into the standard narrative of a protagonist coming across conflict, coming around that conflict and then learning something about themselves or something. That's the standard, like, hero's journey or something. I can't remember exactly what it's called. So that's the bit that I think sort of really that audiences would feel. That's the part of the story that you feel rather than necessarily get bogged down in the details of what the antagonist was. Like, it could be a dragon, or it could be like in an ordinary story, it could just be a nasty person that's trying to, like, I don't know, anything really. It doesn't matter. All of that stuff is kind of window dressing on top of the core of the story. But it also depends what format you're trying to do this in. Like, are you trying to tell a story through sort of like a comic style, or is it just a single image that hints at a story to make it more interesting, engaging?
Well, hopefully that answers your question, Latte Milky.
Kind of rambled.
How are you finding it
So
drawing?
what was the question exactly again?
Pardon?
What was the question
Oh,
exactly?
I think, yeah, you might have just rambled on a bit, but it's fine. So it's more about how to practice storytelling visually, really, and what kind of stories to focus on when starting off.
Yeah, so that's it. Assuming that you're going for storytelling in an image. So you may have an environment with some characters in it that are doing something, and you want to tell a story about what might happen next, things like that. I don't think it matters too much whether you're going realistic or not. Really, the thing you need to focus on there is the content of the image. So showing enough of what's happening for the viewer to understand it.
Right.
And then using things like lighting and composition to lead the eye around the image. So if there's like a certain order you want the viewer to see things in, then try and perhaps order that in terms of how how much contrast is on each aspect. So, you know, your story could be someone entering a cave and discovering a dragon hiding there. So something you might do is have like a bright light on your character from the entrance, and then everything else is sort of cast in shadow. So when you see the image, you see the character entering, you see that they're looking scared or brave or whatever expression you want to give them.
Yeah,
And then,
so there's definitely a lot of
as you
layers
develop
and
the image longer.
considerations to storytelling.
Because the next thing you'd notice then is the dragon hiding in the shadows, for example. So that sort of tells a story of how this character is discovering the dragon, or whatever.
I suppose it's like, what do you really want to show off in that story as well, since there's so many different aspects too.
So yeah, that's the sort of approach you should take. Try and see the image as if you'd never seen it before, and think about which things stand out and what order you're paying attention to each element in.
Alright. I think that should be thorough enough of an answer. Are you finding it difficult to come up with proper responses to questions while coming up with a design, Thomas?
Sort of. I find I'm just pausing with design a bit more it's probably not happening that fast.
That's what we found when we first started.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
We had a lot of trouble.
But I mean, you could be the judge of how much my answers make sense.
I think we'll
Like,
let the
yeah.
chat be the judge of that.
How many sketches?
It's really until I found something that I really like the look of.
So
I
are
think I
you
like this
happy
one a
with
lot.
any of the sketches that you've done so far?
I'm not happy with his tail. I was gonna put like
I
a
really
snake on
like
it.
this guy. He just looks like
Yeah. It looks derpy, but cute.
it's like
Yeah, but
a
this dude looks fun.
potato moose rooster with
I might.
rooster
He's got fishy
centaur
bits.
with derpy dinosaur legs.
In fact, I think I might give him a big scale-like beard. Because the other thing is, so going kind of back to storytelling, there isn't too much of a story to tell with this.
Well, you can always layer
Perhaps if I wanted to, that's the thing, if I wanted to add something, it might be like giving this little character a fishing rod or something.
Mm.
You know, they ride around on this monster and they catch things, they explore with it,
Mhm.
something like that.
So even adding just a little bit of prop or detail will add so
Yes.
much to the story.
Yes, and I think that's something that audiences really like to
Mhm.
see, because at the moment
So it's
they're like,
like
oh,
a-
it's
Some kind of connection with
yeah,
I guess with
they
the
see a
character.
connection,
Yeah.
and they can imagine a new scene, so they could imagine this character, but in a little environment, you know, where you've got some water at the edge or something, and they're here, little characters leaning out and fishing with it.
Fishing
and then-
buddies
You know, maybe then there'll be a cute little scene of
taking out their
the big
pet
monster.
alebrije down by the river.
Yeah, something like, you know, the little girl may have climbed into a tree so she can stand up and drop a piece of fish into the big monster's mouth or something. You know, you can start imagining a little story and the scenes within it
So cute.
just by adding something like a fishing rod. But
Oh, and
without
for the
it,
questions
I
in the
guess-
chat as well, we'll slowly get to them, so don't worry, we have not forgotten. And of course, would like to give a big hi to all of the people that are watching silently there in the
To the
background.
40 people
Yes.
that are watching.
This is actually the most amount of people that we've had on our stream so far.
Excellent.
It's really awesome. Okay, should we move on to the next question then? from
Yes,
the chat?
and also on a note for Thomas, if you've come up with a design that you're happy with, I think we would love to see you begin your rendering process and see how you
Yes,
approach
I
that.
think I should
next
start
stage.
doing that now.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question from the chat comes from Mats028C. He's asking, anything you would recommend to improve sketching and visual library? I seem to have a hard time with that compared to lighting and rendering my work.
Yeah, if you can, daily studies of things that interest you. So go on Pinterest or something like that. Type in any sort of object, and Pinterest is great because it's sort of like it's already been curated.
Oh yeah, Pinterest
So,
is my jam.
yeah, it's already like everything you find on there will probably have some sort of artistic finesse to it. You know, it's a photograph that someone's taken deliberately to make that object look good.
I
or
suppose
it's
so.
artwork that people have chosen because it stands out.
Mhm.
Certainly compared to just searching things on Google
All right, if you
Images.
put it that way, I agree.
Because that's sort of like the alternative, essentially. So yeah, you can also just browse through that for hours until you find something you like, but be wary that you can just spend a lot of time picking things out that you think, oh, I'll come back and do a sketch of that. Oh, this one too, I'll do a study of that thing. You can get into that mindset for hours, feel productive, and ultimately actually do no studies. So
Right, so it's a form of productive procrastination, I guess.
yeah. So yeah, what I'd do is something like character design or environment design. I guess choose which one you want to do or what sort of area you want to focus on, and then find some objects and try and sort of convert those into an environment or something. So you're taking the object, you're essentially doing a study of it, but you're transforming it at the same time. Because just doing a study of an object isn't going to really make you think about that object and make it stick in your mind. So you may take a teapot, look at a bunch of teapots, and sort of the way that you'll digest the elements of a teapot that make it a teapot. If you're thinking about turning it into a house or something, you go, oh, the spout could be a chimney. The lid on the top can be something where it opens up, so it's like a sunroof or something. And so you start sort of remembering all these parts, because you have to put some more thought into how they're used in your design.
Yeah, I think the best way to learn is definitely breaking stuff down and then using it for your own work, and that way it sticks better to your brain, your mental image.
Definitely. I think people sometimes make that mistake of not applying their studies, and it ends up kind of being forgotten. Actually, I do have a question on my own, so sorry, chat. I'm gonna cut in here a little bit, but
That's not
hey, host privileges. Okay, so
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So one thing I am very curious about, and I'm sure a lot of us are. Actually, one thing that I think should be mentioned is, sorry to bring this up, Thomas, is actually, well, the age that you managed to get into Atomhawk and have your first opportunity or first step into the industry. How old were you again when you first joined Atomhawk?
I was 20, although technically I got the job offer when I was 19, so I'll take that.
I mean, that's the thing. When the first time that in the studio meeting, and they were showing off your portfolio, saying that you're a new hire.
Yeah.
I think you were the hire that created such a stir and uproar in the studio when we realized just how young you were and how good your portfolio was.
Wow.
Right.
So how that will translate into a question is, how exactly did you manage to improve so fast? And I suppose, what do you think you did separated you from a lot of aspiring artists to get into the industry at such a young age?
Yeah, so I'm going to credit it to Rich because it makes a nice story. Rich Carey, I reached out to him because he had done the same art foundation course I had. And he basically said to me, you've got to put a bunch of time in. Like, it's not going to happen by itself, you've got to work really hard. Go on ArtStation and work until your artwork rivals the quality of that. So this is when I discovered ArtStation, because I just hadn't come across it before then. All I knew was DeviantArt and stuff like that. And obviously I was blown away by all the artwork that was on there.
But fun... Oh, go on, sorry to interrupt.
Well, so my approach from there was to literally start trying to mimic the, obviously the quality, but the techniques and things that people on ArtStation were using. So my main sort of loop of practice was to find art that I thought was great, gather a couple of images by the artists of a theme, and then essentially make an image that was the same theme, maybe the same content, but my own take on it.
Right. I think that goes back to what you're saying about building visual library, isn't it? Where you kind of do a study of sorts, or at least through mindful observation, and then applying it into your own work.
Yep, exactly. And that way I learned the technique that they were doing. Well, I was trying to sort of learn technique as I did it. I could have like a direct comparison. So something like a negative of studying alone is that you don't have people to give you feedback. And I found that the feedback I always wanted was for people to do paint overs and show me how I could improve the thing that I'd done. And I still think paint overs are one of the best ways to communicate that sort of information. So having taken an artist, essentially tried to copy what they had done, but in my own way, I could then see immediately when I'd finished my work, I could put them next to each other, and I go, well, why is his better? What has he done instead of what I've done? How do they compare? So it was almost like I had a teacher that was going, you shouldn't do this, you should do this instead.
But
and that was really helpful.
interestingly enough, though, there's some people out there with the advice as well, not to compare yourself to others. So, do you have any disagreements to that, or perhaps there's a certain addition or caveat to that, you think?
So I think that advice comes from people not wanting to be disheartened, essentially, when they're learning. It's easy to look up at everyone on ArtStation and be like, damn, like they're way ahead. How am I going to catch up with this sort of level of skill? It seems hopeless, or whatever. I think that's where that sort of advice comes from. And then the other side is sort of, you shouldn't follow what other people are doing. You need to make your own voice as an artist.
Right.
So those two things sort of come together, and people sometimes will get the advice of not following, or not looking at too much of other artists' work.
I suppose it has to be
something
done for the right purposes, and to be conscious of how it's actually making you feel, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's something you just need to be conscious of. I don't know, it's a hard one.
You
I think
just have to be mindful about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Just gonna read a few things from the chat as well. 8-bit wizard says the creature design looks like Jordan when he's hungry. That is literally me.
Brilliant. Who's writing in it? I could make that Ken.
Ken inside my mouth. Oh wait. Oops.
Should add some glasses.
Ken's not a
Okay,
cute
not
girl.
right, but,
And I'm not naked.
And Dina
Nobody wants to
also
be.
was saying when I mentioned your age earlier that you stole her baby status as well.
Yes, indeed. She was the youngest. And I stole it. I mean, Philip was very close to stealing it because he's only 3 months old.
Yeah. All right, and
Okay,
moving on to
we
another
should-
question. Yes, and we'll try and get the answers a bit choppier now, or at least much more concise. So I think the next question is asked by Mangami.
Mangami,
Yes.
right?
How do you manage the details in your artwork so it's not too noisy but also readable at the same time? Yes, that is a very good question. And if you please, Thomas.
Right. So, this is something I've been thinking about for ages, and trying to find a good way to describe it, or like a way that doesn't sound overly complicated. But I've kind of been thinking how everything kind of breaks down into levels of detail, and how you could like map that out. This is like my scientific brain trying to break down artwork.
Your high IQ brain.
So essentially, taking this this here, for example, you could like draw a heat map of where the detail is. Yeah, I'm trying not to make this science, but essentially, in science, you have a graph of something, of a relationship, and if you follow the gradient, if you look at how the gradient of that graph changes, you get a new graph, which describes how that changes. So it's like, if I take this image, the detail is concentrated around the mouth, and so you want there to be areas of high detail and areas of low detail, and so you'd end up with like a heat map, kind of like this. So these are the low detail areas around the back. It sort of becomes low detail there, and then on things like the hands, on the feet, and the tips of these horns, this is high detail again. And so you get this sort of like gradient of detail like this. So you want to make sure that this itself, if you then did that again on this image, it's like, so this is where the detail is concentrated in terms of detail sort of going back and forth. So you want to make sure that this graph looks organic and interesting on its
Right.
own. So I have, like, this is where like the rule of big, medium, small can come in again.
Mm-hmm.
I have one really big area of detail. I have one large area of low detail. I've then got these medium areas of lower detail, and these medium to small areas of high detail. So trying to sort of balance everything out in that sense is what I think about. And it kind of, for me, it comes from what I think looks appealing. But if I started adding like extra frills and stuff on the back here, this would start making the detail level sort of equal everywhere. Everything would have the same sort of detail continuously, and it would start to become chaotic. You wouldn't know which area to focus on.
So essentially,
like if I had
it's
another
just
leg in the middle.
with the areas of high frequency details, you also need some lower frequency details to kind of balance it out then.
To balance it out, yeah. And these designs are interesting because a lot of them have a constant amount of detail all over them, but even something like this, they've kind of gone for the opposite, where the high detail becomes like noise that you start to ignore. And so because all of this stuff kind of blurs out to be like actually if I took this section of the image, if I'd actually blur this out, then is it going to show it? Oh, I need to put it above. Like all of this stuff kind of blurs out to a grey because it's alternating between dark and light so quickly. But then
that's actually a pretty good
on
technique.
the face. Yeah, on the face we've got this large area of uninterrupted bright colour that stands out. Like this blue also stands out quite a bit. I mean, if anything, my critique of this design would be that this area really distracts because it's as bright as the face as well as having the high contrast. But they've done the opposite, where the things that stand out are where you've got uninterrupted chunks of colour.
So basically, everything is about contrast.
Yes, everything comes down to
and
contrast.
the squint read, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. So squint at the image.
Yeah.
You want a nice balance of detail versus low
I
detail.
think that's where we Asians have an advantage because we naturally squint. That's why we're so good at, controlling like detail density.
Oh no.
No comment.
I'll get banned.
It's okay.
I'll get banned from
It's
Twitch.
okay. I'll give you the yellow card. All right. I think that is a very good answer and something that I will be sure to keep in mind myself. And we can move on to the next question.
Okay, so the next one comes from Alexaniel. He's asking, what is usually a concept artist's normal document setup for Photoshop like?
I make a Photoshop document. Generally, I find it's more comfortable, even if I'm going to end up doing something portrait, to just have it landscape so it fills the screen. And I go for 6,000 on the longest axis pixel. And that just seems to work for me. And so from there, I will make it larger, I'll make it smaller to my needs. But that seems like a reasonable place to start. So this I've gone for 6,000 height, and I've stretched it out wider because I realized I needed space for the reference. And that basically means that at any point, if I go, oh, I do like this, I have detail there that I wouldn't have otherwise kept. So I can always go smaller at the end if it's running slow. But I never have to increase the size and touch up edges that become blurry and stuff. So.
All right, I think let's also move on to the next question. We'll try and keep
I don't think
these
there's anything
to
else that you
around
need to
5
set
minutes
up.
each, I think.
How much do you guys use 3D and photo textures at Atomhawk?
3D varies, but everything I do probably has some sort of photo texture in. Even if it's like a stylized image that just needed some sort of repeated patterning, I would essentially either find a texture I like and reduce it down to use a bunch of filters that squish it down to make it look a bit more painterly, or or I might even draw a texture out myself, or draw a pattern out myself, and then use that image to photo bash with. That's something I'm going to do with this creature.
Cool.
Because instead of trying to carefully sort of, if I'm drawing some lines that contour around here, instead of trying to follow the contour perfectly and reduce my brush size as it gets thinner and stuff, I want to do a more complicated pattern where I might do this or something. I might copy this over a bunch or something, and now I can just warp this into place.
Oof.
Wow.
Yeah, not a real artist. I'm cheating, but certainly to start with, this is going to give me a much better base, and then I can paint on top of this and make it work
Right.
however I want.
Yeah.
But it's so much faster than trying to draw this stuff in by hand.
Yeah, that's true actually. I think that's where I'm a little bit stubborn myself. I guess I'm a glutton for punishment that way.
And another example would be like if I drew one of these, like what I plan to do is put some sort of scalloping pattern around the edge. If I did that neatly, there's no point doing that again. So I'll just copy it over. And again, I'll probably need to paint over this somewhat. But if I just copy that over and warp into place, that's done the job much faster than I could have by hand. And a lot of it you can even get away with keeping, because when you've done such an aggressive warp on something, it's very hard to to see that it's been copied. So I will try and use these sort of shortcuts everywhere I can.
I see.
Call it laziness or call it hyper efficiency.
Yeah.
But either way, it's like photo bashing, and I'll use that sort of technique in everything.
Right, so you're kind of like
It's
piece
really-
bashing.
Yeah, exactly. And even if, like, I think I probably had this technique ingrained from when I watched all of Feng Zhu's videos, but he would start some of his paintings by taking an old painting, blowing it out, spinning it around, like laying it over itself, just so he started with like some sort of texture. And I like that approach a lot.
Funnily enough, I mean, I went to school there, but I've never done that myself.
You
You
never
know-
paid attention, Jordan.
No, I mean, sure, I might have been sleeping in his classes, but doesn't mean that I wasn't paying attention.
Good fun.
Anyway, we have another question from our beloved first guest, Axel. How much traditional sketching or painting are you still doing, and how is it influencing your digital work?
He's trying to catch me out. I don't do much traditional anything. I've been trying to do, because Axel started doing lunchtime sketching on paper again. I've been trying to do that with him at lunchtimes, and I do really enjoy it. It's really nice. But I have not let myself loosen up yet. I'm still
But you tend to experiment
doing
quite
things
a bit,
that I
don't
feel
you?
safe. Yes, but that's generally... I'm much more comfortable experimenting in digital. Like doing a sketch like this, I'm not confident in my ability to come up with something I like the look of. But if I was sketching on paper.
Traditionally, you mean?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I guess it's because you don't have an undo, and if you really do mess it up, then you can't just reuse the same base and play around with it again.
Yeah,
it's gone.
that's it. And I think I've just got better at line work with a graphics tablet. I think I have smoother lines on a graphics tablet than I do on paper. So yeah, I should do more because it is very valuable.
So do you find it to be quite important though to focus on both things, even though you primarily use digital?
I think so, because the traditional makes you think ahead and be a bit more clever with your placement. Certainly because we've been doing most of this with pen, there's no sort of ability to do a faint line or like a really light under sketch. Obviously you can't rub it out and stuff like that, so when you have things that you know are going to be overlapping other things, whereas in digital, if I wanted to add a horn to him, I would just draw it straight over the top and erase underneath. Like I would do this and then just erase this stuff here. You can't do that traditionally, so when you're sketching something out, you kind of have to think about everything that's closest to the camera and then go backwards. So if I was doing this design again, I'd have to think, well, the eye is going to be completely uncovered, and then I'd have to go straight to the horn. And then I'd have to think about his fin before I start doing his next horn.
I suppose it is
and then
really
I need to leave this space open.
having to plan it out either by pre-visualizing it or maybe doing a rough sketch on the side too.
Yeah. And exactly, it's sort of, you have to work your way between elements. So like I would do a bit of this horn, but I couldn't complete it until I had done this mouth, but I can't complete that mouth until I finished this little character. And you can't draw like the character's head outline until you know where the hair is going to overlap and stuff like that. So it makes you really think about what you're going to design before you do it.
I suppose that then forces you to be much more mindful, which is, well, I think I recall you also telling me, and something you might have mentioned earlier, that mindfulness really is the key to faster improvement.
Yes. Yeah, so this is where you want to avoid doing a study of something and purely focusing on making it look like the object, because you're not actively thinking about the object's function or things like that. You may be sort of paying attention to lighting and stuff, which is good, but then if you're doing that, my recommendation would be to take an object and try and rotate that object before you study it. So you have to understand the lighting rather than just recognize the lighting.
Going back to your piece for a while, actually, why exactly did you choose this color scheme? Because it's quite a crazy one, and I'm wondering what your thought process was behind it.
So again, I've got colors that repeat in multiple places, just because that will make a cohesive color scheme. I've got this dark purple up here that I have kind of mirrored with the dark extremities down here, and then just a lighter version of this color around underneath his chin.
So let's test
the lime green. I've copied twice, and same with this like pink thing.
Yeah, Mads pointed that out in the chat, how the eyes looks like sliced up lemon.
Yeah, they do, which I thought was fun. There was one down here who had a pineapple. Yeah, here we go. This bird. They've turned the wing into a pineapple. I think.
That's pretty cool.
Either that or it's just a coincidence that that's what it looks like. But I thought that was
I guess it's like a happy accident kind of thing where maybe you mistake it for something else, but it turns out to be like a whole new idea.
Yeah. So I like those sort of inclusions.
Yeah.
So this was that's a fun thing I could include. I'll turn his eye into elements.
Yeah. Let's actually put your theory to a test. What would it look like blurred right now?
Right, yeah. So it kind of doesn't work because I have no like high contrast to blur into nothing. But as far as the colors go, it should look like there are. Yeah. So.
Oof.
We have.
Beautiful.
We have this shape of blue, which is the biggest shape.
That's something I definitely don't want to encounter at night.
Yeah. And then we've got two medium dark shapes up here, and then these are all small ones. So like,
I see.
If you look at the shape of each area of color, it is broken down into
so if you
big, medium, small.
If you squint your eyes, I think it's much easier, well, I guess, to really see what stands out. Like the yellows are the eyes, and the fin definitely are the ones that immediately pop out to me.
Yeah, and then something which I plan to do, which might not come up in this blurred version, but these rings, they center around this area, which of course then leads you to look at the character, and that is the bit that I want to focus on. It's the little characters in there.
So the elements are kind of creating a flow towards the main focal point then.
Yeah.
Mm.
So having combined all the colors now, I generally play around with them with the color replace tool. Like you can see, I'd already just shifted the hue around a little bit. So originally I had it something like this. I just liked this slightly limier green and the more turquoise blue. Like, because this piece is so crazy with the colors, really I could go with any of these.
Oh damn! I kind of like that.
The only thing to be aware of is how it affects the.
We might have to put a seizure
values.
warning on this video, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because as you can see, when you rotate it through, some of these feel almost lower in contrast. Like this one has the most sort of grey tone overall compared to this, where the dark blues really get dark. And that's all to do with chroma points of different colours. This one
I think
too,
one thing we're not
the main
really
body-
able to see is you actually moving the sliders, because if you only window capture Photoshop, those pop-up windows don't show up.
Oh, they don't.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just using hue
Yeah,
saturation.
it just looks like it's going crazy on its own, or it feels like I'm the one tripping.
Yeah, it's
out,
just
you
going
know?
on its own.
I was wondering why it just
Yeah.
is changing color by itself.
Right. Yeah, sorry, that's just a window.
Okay. Should we go on to the next
Yes,
question?
yes.
Okay. Next question is by Thea. When looking at your ArtStation, I have noticed that you show a lot of highly rendered illustrations rather than rough concepts with many iterations. So I am curious, at Atomhawk, as a concept artist specifically, do you focus on these illustrations more than the rough concepts with many iterations, or is it like 50-50?
I think 50-50. I think a lot of concept art is less than 50-50, as in it's more iteration and less finish, less polish. In a game studio, there's no need to go to such a tight finish because essentially you have confidence in the people next in the pipeline, the modelers and stuff, to understand your concepts, and if they don't, they can come to you directly. So it's not so necessary to polish all of your designs out. In Atomhawk, because it's a creative partner, basically outsource, everything that gets shipped out from Atomhawk needs to be a bit more polished, so that the next people in the pipeline, generally modelers, have no questions about what we've done, because we don't want them coming back being like, we're not sure what's going on here, or what material is this exactly. Essentially, Atomhawk will aim to get the job done and completed. So generally we end up putting a lot more detail into things we finish. I mean, if you go on Atomhawk's ArtStation, you can see the sort of level of polish we put on some of the characters we do. Like they are illustrative, almost, the point that they've been rendered to. And I don't think that's typical. That's not really typical of concept art.
Yeah. But with that said, I don't think it hurts to have that those skills, because in the end, a concept artist is a problem solver. And if solving the problem does require you to have an ability to render things to a polish, to make it more clarified for the clients, then it's a very welcome skill, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of the time people want to see how it will look almost when it's in game. So they want to see what the furthest it can get to, especially if they're trying to sell these, like in a larger company, if they're trying to convince investors or project managers or whatever to say okay to certain designs. You have to take them a lot further. You have to really go for a polish, so that they go, yeah, that looks awesome. Because it takes an artist to sort of understand the value of a rougher sketch, generally.
Has your view on concept art actually changed when you've gone into the industry versus when you were, let's just say, still learning? Perhaps you can clear some misconceptions that people have, perhaps, on concept art.
I feel like these things will be mostly specific to Atomhawk.
Right. Well, at least from your experience, I suppose. It doesn't hurt to just hear what your thoughts and experience has been
So something that I was always aware of that I kind of didn't do particularly when I was studying is that you should be showing sketches and rough sketches and process. In the end, I didn't have much of that in my portfolio, although the sort of last couple of months when I was making it before joining Atomhawk, I'd been chatting to some art directors and stuff. I just messaged them and asked them what sort of things they like to see in portfolios, and they were all saying, put in sketches, rough sketches.
Yeah.
So I did start doing that, and it is important because we do go through all of those stages, a lot of them. It's just the final product that we send out is the thing that we've polished up. So that was just as important as I sort of knew it should be when I was learning.
Right. So I guess you did have a good and more realistic idea of what concept art is, even when you're starting out.
I think so, yeah. But if you don't know, yes, you need to be able to show that you can sketch quickly, communicate ideas quickly. And something to realize is that a sketch doesn't mean, it means rough rather than loose. I need to find the right words to describe this.
Take your time.
Essentially, it should still be high quality in that it should still have accurate fundamentals and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
However, it's just not detailed almost. So it's not refined, but it is accurate.
Right. I guess it's clear enough to communicate a rough idea or a concept to the client, right?
Yeah, because it's like you can have very good sketches, which will be low on like the number of lines or the time taken to create it, but still look very accurate, very appealing.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. So
I think one guy that I really admire that has really awesome rough sketches is Paul Richards, if you know
Good
him.
Lord. Are you familiar with him,
Every
Thomas?
piece.
I've seen a bunch of his stuff. I don't think I ever studied him. When I was learning. But I think he's someone I've come across since.
It's just so good. I mean, I still go back to his works often, even until now, just to see how, to remind myself of how concept art can be as well, or in some cases should be, where you're focusing purely on the idea and not getting so caught up with fully polished pieces.
Alright, just a note on what I'm doing now. I'm going to copy out what I've got, because I'm sort of happy with the colours overall. And I'm going to do a lighting and shadow pass. So I'll have a brighter version and a dark shadow version.
Okay. So you just duplicated that.
Generally the shadows, like a typical thing would just be to go bluer in the shadows, and also a bit more rich with the colours, because I guess you can't see any of these windows, but generally when you just turn down the brightness, you're losing some of the saturation. So now I've got these two, and I essentially can just make a clipping mask on this and paint in where I want the light to be.
Let there be light, Thomas.
So something that I would probably do on this piece, because all these patterns are completely flat to the surface and should essentially conform to the same lighting as everything else, I would probably be tempted to actually draw on a lot of the patterns before I do this, because this means when I do put the lighting in, all of it is perfectly accurate. I don't need to try and change the hue of different patterning.
Disappeared for a moment.
Oops.
I see.
But this time I'm not going to bother, because it will take a while.
Have you ever used the how do I call it, the dice method, where you use hue and saturation adjustment layers instead of copying the layer?
Just stacking up adjustment layers instead. Yes. The thing I like about this is that if there's a specific color that I want to behave differently in the shadow, color replace tool is my friend. I've started using that a lot more, because I can identify the color, because generally visually I see a color that doesn't look like it fits, and I can just select it and switch it. So, for example, it might be in the mouth here. I don't quite like how this dark version of the mouth color looks, so I can just pick this. Obviously not in the mask. I guess you can't see the replace color window, but it's the one that's in here. So if you go into adjustments, replace color is down here, and I've set it to Control R because I use it so much. But essentially, you pick a different color, and then you can change the hue, change the brightness, and whatever.
We can't see the window as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you can't see the window, so. But yeah, it allows me to change specific colors that I don't like. So in this case, it might be the inside of his mouth. I want it to be brighter or darker or much more saturated.
Oh, and Thomas,
Maybe
I
blue.
think you'll be pleased to know that Hugh Teo is also in the chat, and he says hello.
Ah. Hey, Hugh.
And Burrito
How you
also
doing?
says very cool work as well.
Awesome.
Oh, and
So, yeah.
we have a question from Latte Milky again. So she's asking, I think she's talking. Oh, this question is way back when we were talking about your age.
Right.
Right. So talking about how young you were getting into Atomhawk, it reminds me of a stigma where younger and skilled artists seems better than older, similar skilled artists to the social media. How do you tackle the pressure of this high expectation from the media?
Most people
Very
don't
good
know my
question.
age, so it doesn't really matter. I don't
Good
think
answer.
Until they see you live
social
in
media
person.
knows my age. That's it. Like, either they see me, I don't know if I look that young, but you can be the
That's
judge.
why you never post your photo.
But yeah, it hasn't been a problem because I don't know, it's never been brought up by any sort of social media.
Maybe it's a little difficult to go to the pubs after, art events bringing you along. But, it just wastes a few seconds of
They-
extra
they
ID
ask
check,
me
yeah.
ID.
It's fine. I mean, I can live with that,
I actually haven't been ID'd.
Have you ever snuggled Thomas into a bar,
No,
Jordan?
why would I need to do that?
I don't know.
I don't have a backpack that large. Maybe we can just stand like on top of each other.
We could
like
smuggle
in
you in,
cartoons
Jordan.
with a really long
Backpack.
trench coat. So, does that answer your question, Latte Milky? Hopefully it does.
But I mean, I guess to extend from it, as far as expectations go, it's I don't know. I don't think you should ever feel pressured by
Mm.
either followers that you have
Yeah.
sort of waiting for you to post artwork or anything. Just don't think about that sort of thing. Like that there are plenty of other people that they can be looking it up from. I don't know. I've never experienced anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anyone that's really waiting for me to post another piece of artwork or anything.
Are you sure about that?
Well, as far as I know.
That actually also kind of covers like one of the questions I wanted to ask you on the chat because, well, being so young as well and having, I guess, quite a big following, especially in the last few years. My question is that how do you exactly deal with that newfound popularity of sorts? Because I think for most of us, or speaking for myself personally, it can sometimes do things like overinflate my ego, or sometimes end up changing the direction of where my art takes because I want to show what would, I guess, please the audience the most. Have you encountered something similar to that?
I definitely feel sort of like, oh yeah, I could come up with a design based on that or something, I feel more confident.
Mhm.
But I don't think that's necessarily from, like, I really don't think that's from numbers that I see on ArtStation or anything like that.
Mhm.
Because there are things that people like on ArtStation that I personally don't like myself. The recent CubeBrush entry
Mhm.
that I did, I was happy with it before Christmas when I finished it, but when I came back and looked at it again, I really can't stand it.
Right.
I just don't like it at all now.
Mhm.
But other people do. Enough, at least. They think it's alright.
Yeah.
So, like, my view definitely differs to that of people online, like the audience.
Right.
Um,
I think that's great.
And I think you should always be,
Mhm.
you should pay more attention to your own thoughts, basically, than others.
Yeah, just listening.
Unless they're people that you sort of trust. So, like, when I get feedback from my friends, like Jordan.
Who's that?
If I ask him about something, I'm going to value his feedback a lot more because I understand him, he understands me.
Sounds like both of you share a
and
very
I can-
special connection.
Yeah. And I can validate his feedback, essentially. I trust it. So,
Man, I wish
Yeah.
I can be friends with him. Sounds like a great guy. But yeah, I think that does make sense, though. It's really a matter of choosing which voice you kind of hear, and which opinions you find to be more applicable, I suppose.
yeah. I think in general, the stuff that I tend to go for personally does happen to be some stuff that people resonate
Yeah.
with. Like, I like cute things mixed with a realistic sort of rendering.
Yeah.
I think that's something that people will look at the realistic rendering and they go, oh wow, such skill.
Mhm.
And then they look at the cute thing and be like, oh, it's so cute, I like. The two
Yeah.
things go together very well. So in that sense, I haven't changed what I do. It just happens to be something that I think is generally a bit more popular.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never let it change.
Sorry
what
to
I-
cut you off there a bit, but we have one more question that has been asked by Hugh, and then after that we will actually be moving on to some of the Q&A that has been sent in by some people before the podcast. So Hugh asks, question, how do you tackle design, and can you give some tips on it? And Mads also +1 Hugh's question as well. So I think that's something that quite a few of us here are interested to know.
It's pretty open-ended, that question.
So let's just
How do I tackle
so let's
design?
just say, maybe to narrow down the question a bit, maybe Hugh would like to elaborate, but maybe just to kick us off, let's just say you're given a brief and you have some
Yeah.
parameters that
So-
have been set.
Yeah, I think the first thing is really try and understand. So if you're doing this for a client, for example, and even if you're doing a piece like this, which I'm essentially treating the
Mhm.
audience of the Facebook group as the client, try and understand what they are looking for. So they may have given you a brief that asks for this and this. You've got to work out what they're expecting, almost. So often if they have reference that they've given
Mhm.
you, look into that and look at what similar things that exist around it. Certainly with products like games and things, you can look at the games that are similar to the sort of brief you're being set.
Mm-hmm.
That will be the sort of thing that they have looked at, because they'll have
I
done
see.
their research as the market. So you can figure out what they're expecting, and that's generally best. So trying to understand what the client is looking for, it's a big thing. When it comes to actually doing the design, that's the sort of more open-ended side of it. It's the sort
Yeah,
of generally
personal
a
taste.
mix of new, taste definitely, but going for a mix of new and old is generally the sort of thing you want to keep in mind. You don't want to go too far with a design, too bizarre, too new, because again, this is based on what you think the client is looking for. It's unlikely that they will want
Yeah.
something that's completely off the wall.
So let's.
This
sorry,
goes for
go on.
most things. I lost my train of thought. Go for
I
it.
was just gonna say, so if you were designing purely for yourself, how would you approach your designs? And perhaps are there certain sources that you not rely on, but your go-to inspiration for your design?
So a lot of it I do feel out for myself. Like I will mess around until I find something that I like the feel of. Basically what I was doing when I was starting the sketching process today. Generally, certainly at the moment, I'm looking for stuff that kind of carries a feeling with it.
Right.
Could be that in like a character's expression or something like that. Like I really liked the feeling of this guy's mouth. It's not just a big. It's not a big gaping mouth like this. It's got this slight sort of like pinch at the lips and stuff. So he looks really sort of surprised, like full of energy, kind of like a dog with his tongue hanging out. Like I got that sort of. I look for the sort of emotion that the image or the design conveys.
Right. So you think about your designs perhaps more from an emotional point of view.
Yes. And that's something I also want to try and capture more in environment or like full illustration pieces. I want to capture a mood more than necessarily like because the design within it, say you've got some buildings in there or something, a lot of the time you don't need to be designing everything from scratch. Like a lot of it can be generic essentially, but the way it's presented, the way you render it, the lighting and atmosphere that you give it, that's what controls the mood rather than the design of the object.
So I guess it comes down to what you really want to sell, I guess, in your piece. Is it the mood itself or maybe the building design itself? Then the way you approach it or what you put your focus and attention on will depend on that, right?
Yeah. Exactly, because the designs that you've done a lot of, the buildings, you've essentially kept the mood very neutral. An example where you've gone for a mood in your painting would be, I can't remember what it's called, the kebab stall, where you've got all the people coming in, and adding the people, adding their expressions, the lively movements of the people cooking the food and stuff. That's what gives the piece a mood. Yeah. But without them, you essentially don't have the story to be distracted with, and so you just focus on the design.
Yeah, that's true.
So look at the piece and work out what you want. What you want the audience to focus on.
I think that's important.
Sorry, I have a question to kind of extend the question, I guess.
Go on.
Answer. Say when you're designing a Mac, it's gonna be more functional than something that's based on what your feelings are for like the design itself, right? Like how do you balance that out then?
So how do you balance it?
Yeah, like since if it's something organic, then I think it's easier to say that I like this shape, or it's more subjective in a way, based on your feelings. But what about Mac designs? Because maybe it needs to be more functional.
From a Mac, I feel a lot of the time they are still going for like a pose, a sort of stance. Like a lot of the mechs, they go for the like legs are bent. There's a wide stance, and so that conjures up the feeling of looking at like a buff dude sort of crouched down, ready to attack or something. It gives them a very aggressive look. Like you rarely see mechs that have their legs extended like a human. Like the standard sort of mech stuff, you just think about like a tank body on top, a bunch of guns poking out, and then like these big chunky legs sort of down to the side like this, and then maybe like the cockpit or whatever.
Sort of, unless you're talking about like Gundam style mechs. Yeah.
So yeah, I think Gundam, they all have very sort of exaggerated, cool poses. Like if you're drawing a guy with a sword, just a normal guy with a sword, you might go for like the body here and the hips thrusted out, and then the legs coming down like this. You know, he's got a big sword and whatever in his head. Well, the mechs do the same. They put in like, they just make all this stuff mechanical.
I see.
like you never have like a really dull pose, really. And that's certainly what I went for when I was designing the Cerebro.
I see.
So in a way, you're trying to get the feeling first and then injecting the functions
I think
later.
so. Yeah.
Okay.
Because, I mean, in terms of boiling a design down to, or focusing on just the design and functionality, you'd be doing like a T-pose almost. But anytime you're designing anything, you tend to put them in an appealing pose, or the pose that you'd expect them to take as rest. So for a mech, their resting pose is probably going to be one that's like defensive or ready to attack, because that's what they're designed to do.
Yeah.
Should we move on to the Q&A
Yes, I
session
think
then,
let's
Jordan?
move on to that. So some of the questions that have been asked by our viewers before the podcast.
So this is gonna be about.
What is that motif on the eyes?
So wondering if you'd notice.
It's very obvious.
Thought you can sneak one by us, eh?
Well, you know, that would be funny.
We're a
I was wondering
family-friendly
if you would notice
channel.
if you were reading the chat.
Oh no.
No, stop,
No,
Thomas,
I
stop.
fixed it.
We're gonna get flagged.
Hey,
Oh,
this is
no.
fixed. It's normal now. It's fine.
Okay. All right.
They're like hook shapes
Yeah, I
going
think
in
it's
that
better
direction.
It's drooping. The balls are drooping. And anyway.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's
everyone.
not dwell on that.
Okay. That's not the.
It's okay, Ate Milky. I think it's better that you don't get it.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on actually
Okay.
to the Q&A session.
Yeah. So it's gonna be about salary. So if you're not comfortable with answering that, or if you want to pass the question, then it's fine.
Cool. I think it's fine.
Okay.
Um,
Cool.
I mean, it's it's fun to talk about. I don't mind.
Cool. Do you wanna ask the question away, Jordan?
Yeah, sure. So the question is, let me just read out the whole thing first. How much do you make? Doesn't need to be specific. Maybe a minimum or a range. If you want to pass the question, it's okay too.
Between 20 and 30k.
Pounds.
Pounds.
Yes, pounds.
I think if it
Of
was
course.
rupiah, then that would be very
GBP.
tragic.
Yeah.
Per year as well.
Yes, but yeah.
Right. Well, I guess that's a pretty straightforward
I'm-
question then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to the second
Then
question.
the
So
second-
it is a...
So this is. Okay, go on.
Sorry, Ken. Question from an Indonesian artist. Living cost in Indonesia is cheaper than living abroad, so freelance jobs from most countries are worth taking. What about living in the UK? Do you have to take freelance work from the USA? So I'm guessing maybe from, higher earning countries to make it worth your while.
Probably. Again, I can't talk too much because I don't have a huge amount of experience, but at the moment, the freelance I am doing is from the US. And the other big thing is that within the UK, or depending on where you're doing freelance from, the living costs for you will factor in.
Yeah.
So you don't have to earn as much if you don't need to spend as much. Up north in the UK, where we are in Newcastle,
Yeah.
it's quite a bit cheaper than
Yeah.
down in Devon, for example, where I brought up. Like a good example is just the price of going to the cinema. The view here is £5 to see a film. Back in Devon, I would have to go to Exeter and pay about £12
Wow.
to see the film.
What a rip.
It's a lot more. Yeah, and that's why I never used to go I rarely used to go to the cinema, because it just wasn't worth
Yeah.
it.
What's the living cost like in Newcastle per month? I guess Jordan can also answer this question because you guys are both living in Newcastle.
I think single rooms on Gateshead side, they're like, I think they can go down as low as maybe £300 a month, and between there and 600. I don't know if that's like for a flat. I think it might be 600 to 700 ish. I'm not sure.
Yeah. More or less.
So
Okay.
yeah.
And there is a comment from, how do I read this? Bliggle Nuber? Just dropping by. I have no idea.
That's my brother.
Oh, right. Just dropping by to say bad props to my bro.
So what was that?
Just dropping by to say mad props to my bro.
Ah, right. Yeah.
And a lot of people reacting
Hi.
to your...
How'd you like the design?
There's also quite a bit of reaction to when you stated your salary, ranging from show me the money to damn. Noise.
Nice.
Nice.
Hey Kenny, good to
Okay.
see you in the stream as well. And yeah, I think it's more or less like that.
Okay.
And obviously it depends so this is salary, of course. It depends where you are within the company you're working.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, in any case,
Let's move on to the next question.
yes. So we have one question actually. I think this one is quite a difficult question to answer. So if you need extra time to answer it, feel free to do so.
You
Okay.
might have to focus.
Yeah, so you might have to take a step back from your art for a while. So, if you were a breed of doggo, what would you be?
I've given this a lot of thought,
Yes.
and I still don't
You can
know.
pass.
I don't know.
You can pass if it's too difficult.
But if I wanted to be one, like I would have to choose Shiba.
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 Shibe.
It fits my aesthetic of the perfect blend between enthusiastic, derpy, hopefully lovable.
Are you saying that you're lovable?
Oh, I'm certainly hoping that I am.
Arguable.
So yeah, it's got to be Shiba.
All right. Well, I think you handled that question very well.
Okay.
And
Really had to stop
Blickle
and think.
Nuber says, an old English sheepdog. Have you seen his hair?
It's been cut. It's short now. It's actually short and puffy like a Shiba. So there we go.
All right. That actually,
Transformed.
that's all the questions that has been submitted. But we will be moving on to the next Q&A session, which is the quickfire session.
And I think
Alright.
for this session, I think it might be a good idea to actually step back, because I'm not sure.
You know
I
what?
could be
Just do
thinking-
whatever you want to, Thomas. You can still do
Okay.
just noodle on actually, so the audience
Okay.
still has something
But-
to feast their eyes on.
Yeah. But you have to answer quickly. Just don't think too
Okay.
much.
First thing that comes to your mind. Okay,
Yeah.
Ken, if you do the
I'm
honors.
not gonna be good at this.
Sorry?
If you do the honors, Ken.
Okay. So first question, favorite art tool? Traditional or digital?
Oh, mixer brush.
Mixed brush. Okay. And next one, favorite color?
Ooh, like purple, sort of tarot, kind of like this here. This is my favorite.
Okay. And then favorite music genre?
Electronic.
Electronic.
Covers a
And
lot.
what is
but,
a dish? I'm sorry?
Don't worry.
I think it's cutting off.
I think he's.
Oh, can you hear me?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
Cool.
So let's move on to the next one. What is a dish you can't live without?
Sicilian tuna pasta.
What?
What? Interesting. And then, if you weren't an artist, what would you be?
If I was an artist.
Wasn't.
Also, if I wasn't an
Yeah.
artist. Oh, probably music producer.
Music producer. Interesting. Yeah,
There was a time that I thought to myself, what should I try and pursue most? Like, should I really try and go for art, or should I actually try producing music? I chose art, which was wise because I'm really not fantastic at producing music.
And it was.
But it's like my main hobby outside of artwork.
Yeah. as we can see
Yeah,
from the music
if-
that we put on, or we're putting on the stream right now, actually.
Indeed. Oh, it's
Is there music?
Apparently, well, and people said it was a bit too loud at the start, so that's my bad. But it
Okay.
should be fine now.
So-
And so, yeah, the next question.
Next question. What will make you change career?
I don't know. If the money runs out and I can't survive.
Okay. And then, if you can be an animal for a day, which animal would
Is
it
that-
be?
Sorry, I can't hear you now. I think you're cutting out for me.
If you can be an animal for a day, which animal would it be?
Ooh, I'll go with Shiba.
Shiba. Oh, okay.
I'll get all the attention. Everyone will love it.
And I probably
I
kick
can
you.
just. Well, the thing is, I'd also have like the infinite energy of a Shiba too, and I'd be allowed to just lie down and sleep. Like no one would mind. Basically, anything I do would be fun for everyone else.
Alright, next question.
Okay. Not sure if you've seen the movies, but Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz?
Hot Fuzz. Shaun of the Dead's
What?
great, but Hot Fuzz is one of my favorites. All time.
It's another one of you, Jordan. Okay. Next one. One artist, dead or alive, who you really want to study under?
Things can break is
Sorry,
breaking.
I don't know
up
if
a
it's
bit.
my internet that's slow.
Okay, so
but
one
I'm-
artist.
I don't know if it's my internet that's slowing down, but I'm really not hearing what you're saying.
Wow. Sorry, I think the voice is
Yeah.
robotic.
Yeah, you sound like a robot, if that's what you said.
Yeah.
Do you wanna...
Is it my voice or
I think
is that
most of
slow?
us are actually quite blurry. Why don't we leave the Discord call really quickly and join back in?
Sure.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Can you guys hear us?
Is that better?
Hello?
Hello.
I think it should be a lot
That's
better now.
better.
We're good. We're good now. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Sorry about
so, one artist, dead or alive, who you really want to study under?
Oh, study under. Craig Mullins.
Okay.
Scott.
And then next question: would you rather be forced to kill a puppy or a kitten?
Ooh. Kitten.
No!
Sorry, cats.
Oh my god.
Cats feel... Yeah, it's not a fun one.
This is from Jordan, by the way.
It's just a fun question to end the stream with. I'm not feeling
Next
it.
question.
Just read it, Ken.
Next question then. PewDiePie or T-Series?
PewDiePie!
Yeah, boy. Alright, last one.
He's gonna be the contrarian that has anything else to say.
I fully support your answer.
Okay. So next one, the last one for the quickfire session. If you can live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
I like England, to be honest.
England.
I
Okay.
do like England. I don't really have any desire to leave. If it was temporary, I have not been to Japan, and everyone says, "Oh, Japan's great." And, a lot of artists I know are making their way over there to live there. I don't think I'd want to the whole time, but I definitely want to visit.
Okay.
And cut those.
That marks the end. Oh, what?
Katan Duki says Jordan's house.
Oh, to be honest, I wouldn't mind that either.
Alright, that actually does wrap up the quickfire session, and we will
Awesome.
move on to one more section, which was something that we did last week and we'll be continuing again for this one.
Which is the Art of the Week session. But for this week, we're gonna have TCK put up his favorite artwork from the week that he found.
All right,
So
let
if
me
you would
show
be
you. something I
If you
prepared.
would be so
earlier.
kind to share the
Mhm.
artwork.
Would you kindly?
All right.
Would you please?
I even have the name up so I can credit them.
Wow.
Yes, cool pieces I saw during the week.
Mm-hmm.
This one I really love. If I was to analyze it, I would point out all the sort of the density of detail mapping that I was trying to explain earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But also coming back to just detailing and like the subtleties of I guess rendering almost. The way that they've done the face on this really stands out. It's something that is incredibly difficult to replicate, I find. Is like the individual style that people put on certain features. So like I could copy the face and get the same proportions and everything, but the subtlety of where they've got the lines falling off, certainly around the eyes, where like on both of them they just disappear around here. You only have the shadow of the underneath of the iris. These sort of things I've just come to appreciate even more because it's beyond studying fundamentals. It feels like it's subtlety that is put in because the artist has experimented over and over with faces and found something which looks really appealing.
I see. I see.
And
I
it
can agree with
and
that.
it contributes to the expression a lot.
Yeah.
So this one I just find all of the line work in the face feels so well considered. You get a sense of the lighting because of these like subtle shadows under the eyes, the way that this nose line gets so much thicker here, and then breaks off here. I just this one, every part of the image stood out as beautifully crafted. So
Yeah, I think it's a good choice.
thumbs up to this piece.
Yeah. It's really
John
awesome
Stahl.
image.
Yeah. And of course, you know, it's naturally appealing for its design and
Yeah.
composition and everything. But yeah, I really like this piece. Next
Awesome.
So everyone can
Pablo
check out John
Dominguez.
Staub's ArtStation for more as well.
Yes, John
And
Staub.
on to your next image.
one. Yeah. This one's really cool. I liked watching his process of how he put this one together. Because something I didn't realize when I first looked at it, the perspective is bizarre. From this point, we're looking up and seeing this piece of building from underneath, like quite heavily from underneath. The same sort of perspective on these rocks and the hill going up, and then it all flattens out as it goes to the back, and we end up with a view where we're seeing this background from above. And he's managed to blend these two completely different perspectives, it seems, together. And so we end up seeing this really strange warped perspective where it feels like we're going up a mountain and then down into a valley at the same time. So apart from colors and textures, and you know, I enjoy this style of photo bashing a lot. Ton of motion with the birds flying around. But the thing that really stood out is how he managed to make a cohesive image with this bizarre warping perspective.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on, but it still reads so clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what you're supposed to look
Yeah.
at.
Yeah.
And yeah, I still don't know how it feels correct. Because if I blurred my eyes, essentially if I got rid of this stuff, then really we're just looking down a hill. We're at the top of a mountain and we're looking down into a valley. And yet, with those two elements here, we're coming up a hill and then going down into a valley. I just think it's fantastic. I really want to try experimenting with something strange like this.
That's actually something I
'Cause
didn't
really,
really consider.
Yeah, it's totally surreal if you try to break it down, but yeah, really cool, and it just gives it so much energy.
Yeah.
So I really like this one.
Yeah, same. It's a great choice.
Pablo Dominguez.
All right, I think
How
we
do you
would
pronounce?
move on to the final image.
Right. This again is all about rendering. There's the overall composition, colors, it's all great, really nice lighting, but then the way that they have done the final detail on all of his hair,
Mhm.
I think is just
Yeah,
it's
that's
just beautiful.
fantastically done with the edge control.
Yeah, exactly. So it's this constant switch between hard edges, soft edges, pockets where you see through a clump of hair and see the shadow underneath,
Mm-hmm.
light sort of perfusing through and everything. I think it's really beautiful.
Definitely.
And it just stood out as, it's sort of going back to what you're saying, Jordan, with a lot of the time we sort of ignore details thinking that the underlying shapes and design are the important bit. But with this sort of poster, like the reason it really feels that much more, I don't know, it just, I guess the way they make these things stand out is by having every part of the image appealing to look at. Like you can just take a chunk of this hair and within it you have micro compositions that are made of loads of appealing shapes,
Oh,
changes of
definitely.
colours and all that stuff. So it's something I want to study, essentially how this person renders hair. I want to practice doing something like this myself.
So I guess that's how you kind of find inspiration for new pieces. So it's just you find something cool, you want to try it out.
Oftentimes, yeah. And my process might be that I look at something like this, I think I really want to do something with hair in, and I will try and set up some sort of scene that allows me to do that. So it will have a character in, it will have a bright light from the top left, and then I will try and put in some sort of backlights that I can play around with the rim light that this person's got going on.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's
So-
great. Another great choice, I think. I find it very fascinating just
Really?
having other artists just tell why they enjoy a certain piece of
Yeah.
art a lot. You really get a better idea of what their preferences are and kind of who they are as an artist too.
I think it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because I think with each piece that Thomas showed, I found something that's differently interesting to me personally, instead of the things that he mentioned. So it's what you said about it shows personality. It's very true, certainly.
Yeah, definitely, because we'll all look at it and see the whole image and enjoy
Yeah.
that for its content and mood. But then the specific areas that really stand out to individuals is what separates us.
Fantastic.
So yeah,
It's so deep.
fantastic work from Yulia Litvinova.
Cool.
So yeah,
So
they're
awesome
my-
choices.
they're my 3 picks.
And that actually marks the end of the episode.
Yes, we've
Alright.
we've actually gone through the time that we have. We've actually got a lot more questions that we wanted to ask, but it's actually great to see that the chat has also been very enthusiastic to pick your brain and just to hear your thoughts and ideas on certain things. So it's been really great just to also see your process live too.
Well, I'm glad you've enjoyed it.
Well, it's unfortunate that I
shall-
guess we haven't finished it off over the time
It's
of the
true,
podcast.
but I mean, I
Yes.
shall. I mean, this piece in particular will just have a bunch of detailing of the surface patterning. So when I do finish this up, I guess we can post it on the drawing table Facebook group, so you can see it.
Yes, I think that would be great. So Thomas will be finishing this image off after the podcast, and we will post it up, or you will be able to see him post it up by himself in the Character Design Challenge Facebook group. So be sure to look forward to that, guys.
And I would recommend, if you haven't joined that, you don't need to participate to join the group and see the
Yes.
entries.
Lots of great entries.
Something that really offers me, yeah, and they often go for sort of graphic styles that I just don't get exposed to on ArtStation. So it's really interesting because, again, you see a bunch of different artists' voices and see their takes on a similar theme. So
Yes.
it's a great learning tool.
So just to close it up, are we able to show Thomas's social media links on stream, Ken?
Let me check. Give me 1 second.
Well, thank you for everyone that's come to the stream, and we'll actually just be wrapping it up by sharing some of Thomas's social media links so you can follow him. And that's something that you will definitely want to do if you want to keep updated with his amazing artworks.
No, I don't think.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think we'll be showing it this time.
We'll just post it on the chat. Sorry about that, Thomas.
That's fine.
So if you guys want to see more of Thomas's artwork, you can follow him on ArtStation or also Instagram. All the links are on the chat.
Yes.
So click on the links and follow him.
And we'll be putting it on the YouTube video as well. And yes, we'll also have all of our social media links as well in the description of the VOD later on. So follow us on Instagram and Facebook for updates on upcoming content, and on YouTube to watch our previous episodes, and of course on Twitch to catch future episodes live. And for next week, we actually will not be having a podcast, and we'll be coming back the following week with more.
Okay,
Awesome.
so thank you very much, guys, for coming, and also thank you very much, Thomas, for spending your time with us. And
My pleasure.
yeah, we'll see you guys on the next podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much everyone for your
All
time,
right.
and of course Thomas. Do you have any final closing words you'd like to say?
Generally, my advice to anyone that's learning is to reach out and ask questions to the people that you're following or that you admire. I certainly did it.
What if they don't
It sort of
respond?
Well, I'll be
my-
expecting a lot of messages in my
this is it.
inbox, so thanks, Thomas.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Talk to Jordan. Ask Jordan about everything. No, but yeah, people like professionals are busy. They may not have time. It's not anything personal to do with you.
Yeah.
So if you don't get a response, it doesn't matter. It's just try someone else. Try again, and don't get disheartened by it. It's certainly not personal.
Yeah, no, I think that's good
So-
advice.
Okay.
All right, and I think we can end on that note. Thank you so much, guys, for joining another episode of the Drawing Table, and we will see you at the next one.
Yes.
All right, take care, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.